Harmanpreet Kaur made 37 runs from 39 balls in the WPL final. And it may not seem like a lot, but it was enough for her team to win the first ever edition. But she won before she was ever there. In fact, women's cricket won before she stepped out on the field for this game. And that is also because of what she did in an innings, but not in this game. Harmanpreet Kaur played probably the most influential innings in women's cricket. And that is not to downplay the many incredible innings that I'm sure have happened in the history of the game. I wasn't there for Betty Snowball's extraordinary knocks, like when she was run out for 99 at the Oval, but I'm sure it was pretty exciting. I also wasn't there for many of Myrtle McLaglen's great knocks. Am I just mentioning these two because they have all-time great names? Maybe. But they were also fantastic players in women's cricket. And in terms of innings, Belinda Clark's first ODI double 100 for men's or women's cricket was another huge moment in the game. And this is not even mentioning Rachel Hayhoe Flint, who did everything for women's cricket. There is no figure in the women's game to compare her to. She is not just a great cricket player, but a founder of cricket. She was living in a world where Len Hutton had just said, a woman playing cricket, that's like a man trying to knit. And yet she played, captained, and invented the Cricket World Cup. Any one of those is amazing. And no one else in history is ever going to have done all three like she did. And the fact that she also invented the Women's World Cup before we even had a men's is a phenomenal effort. The only person on her level in terms of cricket is W.G. Grace. And to be fair to the big fella, he did little else other than be really good at cricket in a way that made him sport's true first global superstar. And Hayhoe Flint did just as much for cricket as Grace. And she didn't do it just for herself, she did it for the sport. Grace wasn't out on the street grabbing people's spare change to help fund cricket, or writing up a solid 150 words on matches he played on so there would be coverage of them. That is not what any great male cricketers ever had to do. But it's what Hayhoe Flint did. And she did more and more and more. She didn't just change cricket because she was a great cricketer, she changed cricket because she was great. And the truth is that many women helped move the game forward. Betty, Myrtle, Belinda, and Rachel are just some of the names. But no one did it as violently as Harmanpreet. The Australia she faced in the 2017 World Cup was not quite the same team we see now, but it was, well on its way. An embarrassing loss to the West Indies in the previous year's T20 World Cup rattled them a little bit, but they knew what they were building towards. And crucially, they had already built the Women's Big Bash, so they were already professionals in a sea of amateurs. And if you're thinking, well, this was 2017, maybe this was before they assembled their best bowling attack. Oh no. This was lit. 23 women have taken over 100 ODI wickets. 3 of them bowled to Harmanpreet in this game. Megan Shute, Jess Jonassen, and Elise Perry. It's basically an all-star lineup. Their other main bowlers were Ashley Gardner and Kristen Beams. This was just an incredibly strong bowling attack. And of course, it wasn't just about the talent on the field. The Australian women had won 6 of the first 10 World Cups at this point. India's biggest success was a single final, where Australia smashed them. And in 2017, Harmanpreet wasn't a big star. Her ODI record was really good in terms of average, but she generally scored pretty slow. And you can see how much better she was after this particular knock. And it wasn't as if her T20 numbers were great either. She had played 7 years of international cricket at this point. While there were signs that she had talent, there was nothing that would point towards the fact she was about to do something epic and world-changing. But this innings didn't start that way. In fact, it was an incredibly slow knock for a very long time. After 39 balls, she was only 19 runs. But as you can see, that certainly changed. In fact, let's be clear. She went from a strike rate of 68 at the 25 over mark, and then for the back half of the game, she struck at 231. 231. That number was not normal for cricket's past, and it wasn't really normal for that time either. Even now, that is not a normal strike rate. That is some shift of gear. And that entire innings was 2 balls longer than her second longest ODI knock. And yet she scored virtually 100 more runs against the best bowlers around in a semi-final of a World Cup. But the thing that really starts her going ballistic is when Kristen Beam misses the cut square. The umpires end up giving it as a no ball, which results in it being a free hit, and that is the point at which Harmanpreet is completely unchained. I was at this game, and I kept waiting for the innings to end. Not because she was batting poorly, but because she kept swinging everything across the line to mid-wicket. Surely the law of averages said that at one point she was going to find a fielder, play over one, or just sky the ball straight up in the air. You cannot attack this hard with that one kind of shot and get away with it. But she did. Like the entire thing was preordained. Like the Snowballs and Myrtles of the world were guiding each ball into safety because they knew that this is what women's cricket needed. Just one crazy, batshit insane innings that changed everything. Oh, and it's worth having a look at that world-leading bowling attack because there are still pieces of them that you can find on the Derby Pentagon, which I believe is the world's most famous pentagon. To start with, we have Jess Jonassen, who is probably the best defensive bowler in the women's game, and she got torched. All things considered, Beams got away with it pretty well, considering that she almost had the yips at one point. Megan Shute is one of the best seamers in the world, and she went everywhere. Ashley Gardner was only young then, but she still went at almost 10 runs at over, and that was after going for 9 runs in her first 5 overs. Harmanpreet took her for 23 runs in 1 over. But my favourite is Elise Villani, who was a proper part-timer. She was throwing the ball in hope more than anything else. And across all international cricket, she only bowled 41 overs outside of this one. So this is the equivalent of throwing a hairdryer at a tornado. And if you want to know how much this affected Villani, her entire career, she only bowled another 2.2 professional overs after this. There was another Elise, of course, Perry. And looking at this, you would think, well, she did pretty well. But Perry only bowled 1 late over, which was pretty lucky for her because Harmanpreet only faced 2 balls in it. She got a little bit of stick early on as Harmanpreet was starting to ramp up, but that was it. And we're still talking about a strike rate in the 80s. It only looks small because of the mountains around it. It was just an incredible knock. Harmanpreet gave us an innings where she made 4.75 times more runs than the next best Indian player. She made over 60% of their total. She won the semi-final before the great Australian batters had even gone out in the middle. That was probably just the most exciting thing to ever happen in Derby. But as I said before, women had played incredible innings before, like the Belinda Clark one. But this one had 3 key ingredients. This was a World Cup that had a little bit of media attention and fans were actually tuning in. It was broadcast around the world, and Harmanpreet made this innings for India. Social media, TV, streaming, uncles WhatsApping their nieces. This was hitting everywhere. You could feel it during the game. I was at the ground, but social media was bumping. Cricinfo got huge numbers. All the streaming platforms and TV platforms suddenly had people tuning in the more sixes she hit. Harmanpreet smacked women's cricket into lounge rooms. And let's be honest, it wasn't just her. She didn't do this on her own. All the women I mentioned before played their part, plus many other women and a few men who helped keep women's cricket going when there were a lot of men who were trying to stop it from even existing. Even in her side, you had Julian Goswami and Mithali Raj, 2 absolute legends who kept women's cricket going in India against all odds. But Harmanpreet exploded at a time when the sport had some momentum, and she did it in such an incredible way that it changed everything. That she led the first WPL winning team that was watched by millions and is now worth a lot of money was poetic justice for everything she did in that other innings. It's not just that she made people look at the women's game differently. She demanded that they look at it in the first place. That day that she became the Harmonster and ate Australia, she also changed the game. That is a hell of a thing to do in one ODI knock.